Hello and welcome to Town Meeting TV's coverage of General Election 2024. My name is Debbie Ingram, and this program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the general election, which will be Tuesday, November 5th. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/general or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel, where auto-generated captions are available. If you're tuning in on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy this election season. On tonight's program, we will hear from two candidates running for the Vermont House from Chittenden District 14, which is part of Burlington. These candidates are, to my immediate right, Mary-Katherine Stone and Barbara Rachelson. They are both incumbents, and we are still very happy to hear from them because it's important to hear, even if they're unopposed, where they stand on the issues so that you can make good decisions. We have prepared a list of questions for each of the candidates, and you will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Rebuttals will only be allowed if a candidate is named directly. We don't really expect you to be doing that, right? But in which case the candidate will have 30 seconds to respond if that does happen. And if you're tuning in live, we welcome your questions by calling 802-862-3966. If you call in, we will do our best to prioritize your question, though we will screen calls to ensure that questions are not repeated. We ask that you share your name and the town you live in, and we ask that your question be directed at all candidates, not just one candidate in particular. You can also submit questions for future forums online at cctv.org/general. So let's get started with 1-minute opening statements. Basically what we're looking for, folks, is why you're running and what qualifies you to serve as state representative. And you'll have 60 seconds for those openings. So let's start with Mary-Katherine.
Okay, thank you for having me. First of all, my name is Representative Mary-Katherine Stone, and I'm so humbly privileged to be wrapping up my first term in the Vermont State House, where I represent Chittenden 14, along with Representative Rachelson, and serve as the clerk on the House Committee on Education. I ran for office because I'm a story keeper. I've worked as a healthcare worker, as an occupational therapist for over a decade. I meet people and their loved ones oftentimes in their most vulnerable places in life when they're grappling with a new illness or disease or an injury. And in doing so, I get to see a different side of society. I'm a part of stories of grief, loss, despair, and I see cracks in society as well, but also stories of hope and resiliency in community. So I ran to uplift those stories and those lived experiences as well as the people who are a part of them, and my own unique lived experience as a young Egyptian American queer woman who is also the spouse of a veteran.
Great, thank you so much. So that means, Barbara, it's your turn. You also have 60 seconds.
So we're a citizen legislature, and I am a Vermonter by choice. My husband and I moved to Vermont in 1991. We picked Vermont because we thought it was a great place to raise our family. And I've been a working mother. I'm a social worker and have led several different organizations. So I've seen people who are vulnerable and struggling. I've had a chance to go through the process of finding childcare and balancing that. And I am running. I've been a legislator since 2013, and I have served on House Education in the past. I'm on House Judiciary and Judicial Nominating and Judicial Rules.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so now we'll move into our questions on various issues. The first one is on property taxes and education. And you'll each have 90 seconds to address this thorny topic. So our question is, this year, many Vermonters will see a double-digit increase in their property taxes and nearly a third of school budgets failed on town meeting day. How will you approach education funding reform and property taxes for the coming fiscal year? So this time we'll start with Barbara.
So my first biennium, I was on House Education. And I've got to say, I was shocked to learn that our property taxes are the only way that we really pay for education, and that the school education budget is basically the local school districts, when they pass their budget, sending their budget up. We don't do that with any other system. We don't do that with our healthcare system. What's continued to shock me is how much we spend on educating so few, our numbers are going down. So currently we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 89,000 students, and we've been paying $2.5 billion. I have introduced a bill since my second biennium to have one school district. Vermont's school districts are the smallest in the nation by a factor of 9, and we spend a lot of money on admin. So I'm excited that the committee has been working to look at other options this summer and fall, and not the committee, but the special commission. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that we will look at outcomes and making sure that our dollars are going to education and not necessarily all these supervisory unions and overhead and admin that really don't help, and it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable way to fund education.
Okay, thank you for that. And so, Mary-Katherine, I'll turn it over to you.
My time to tackle the thorny issue. I serve on House Committee on Education, which is the policy committee, and the way that we got here, there are many reasons. Rising healthcare cost, the rental market, COVID funds drying up. We've had a moratorium on school construction since 2007, so we have numerous buildings across the state that are literally falling apart. Speaking of numerous buildings, as Representative Rachelson highlighted, to be such a small state, we have a ton of schools, and that means a ton of funding to upkeep those schools. We also have a lot of unfunded mandates that we, the legislature, have historically put on schools. PCB, remediation and testing, that program, I say that in quotes because there's not enough funding there, as we as Burlingtonians know, is something that schools are grappling with as well. Schools are also acting as a social safety net right now. They're doing so much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're doing way more than they were doing 10, 15 years ago when I was in school. They're having to address how to feed kids, mental health care needs, addressing the effects of houselessness. And so there are many reasons that we are to where we're at right now. I'm happy that we did do some stuff to address those issues this past biennium in the legislature. We passed the BOCES, the Boards of Cooperative Education Services, so that school districts can partner up and cost share some vital resources. We also passed more community schools funding, drawing down more federal funding for that, which is a model of schooling. But the main thing we need to do is have the political fortitude to make hard decisions, address school consolidation, address our town tuitioning program, and so much more. So I'm in the arena fighting those fights, and I look forward to continuing to do that hard work.
Thank you for that answer. All right, now we'll switch topics to housing, also a difficult issue. This past session, Democrats in the House proposed spending an additional $100 million per year for 10 years on publicly subsidized affordable housing. This level of investment was not, however, passed in the Senate. Would you support this level of public investment in housing in the next biennium? And we will start with Mary-Katherine.
Yes, I was really proud to support that bill in the House, and disappointed that it wasn't taken up in the Senate. But there were parts of it that were taken up in the Act 250 bill that I was happy to see, notably the disability housing, which I'm a strong proponent of, especially being an occupational therapist who's oftentimes on the discharge planning team to get folks home. But we need to do more. I don't feel like we can just zone and permit reform our way out of this crisis. Just like education, it's going to have to take bold action to make big changes, to make sure that we are addressing those 7,500 units that we need for our most vulnerable populations, our senior housing, subsidized housing, and our middle and lower income housing. So Vermont currently allocated 50% of the property tax transfer to affordable housing and conversion, but we have historic private and public underinvestment. And so I look forward to continuing to do more and press forward with bold action.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And turn it over to Representative Rachelson.
So I know that the new report just came out that Vermont will need 24,000 to 36,000 homes by 2029. So at least what we passed in the House needs to happen. We also need to look at not only building houses, but rehab of houses. Mm-hmm. I'm glad Representative Stone touched on the disability housing, which is also something near and dear to my heart. My mother is disabled, and I know firsthand how difficult it is to find housing that works for people. Too many Vermonters are spending more than 50% of their income on housing. I'm hoping we can continue to encourage the universities and colleges to house their students, mm-hmm. to look at continuing to look at the zoning issues that we've passed and continue to have incentives for people to have accessory dwelling housing, looking at multifamily housing, looking at second homes that are vacant a lot of the time, and perhaps adding a tax there that could help subsidize some of our housing efforts. It's going to take a lot, but there's hardly anything more basic than someone having housing. And we're paying a lot when people are stuck in hospitals waiting to be released, or nursing homes. And we need housing in all the categories.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So a related topic actually is the issue of emergency shelter. Vermont reported 3,295 people experiencing homelessness in 2023, which is up almost 3 times from 1,110 just in 2020. This year, the state is rolling back its pandemic-era emergency shelter capacity across the state, pushing hundreds more Vermonters onto the streets. How will you approach the need for emergency shelter in the coming session, and how should the state pay for it? And so, Barbara, we'll start with you.
So one thing that's heartbreaking is Sunday is one of the days that more people are going to be released. So there are going to be 450 people that don't meet the categories to be getting emergency shelter. And I was in a meeting with a bunch of providers this week who are very concerned. So one thing is, we know that for emergency shelter, it's really important that people have services to go with it. And we have some great providers in Chittenden County. I know CVOEO has really impressive data on people that they've been able to keep housed in the emergency shelter while they help them to find more permanent shelter. So one thing is, services need to be put in place. We also need to make sure that we're not having people freeze. We have dates in there, but it's very precarious. And when people are homeless, we have worse healthcare outcomes, which we're paying for. So in many ways, the more we can take care of making sure people are housed temporarily until they can find more space, the more we're going to save money that can help pay for that housing. Some of the ideas I threw up before about second home taxes are another way to help fund that. It's appalling that Vermont is the second worst state per capita, and I'm committed to continuing to make that a better number. It's shocking and not fair to.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much. So, Representative Stone.
I wear many hats. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm also a float staff at COTS, and I spent my morning there. So this is very front of mind. Housing is a fundamental human right, period. And emergency shelter is not a solution to homelessness. And in order to accomplish long-term solutions, housing, it requires collaboration and partnership with community agencies. Homelessness is very complex, and it's very individualistic as far as how people come to be homeless, but it's often a root cause and a social determinant of so many other things, including health, but not limited to. And I've seen that firsthand through my research, working at a Catholic workhouse in Atlanta when I was in graduate school, through my work at COTS and my work at the hospital. We should be providing housing to our neighbors and sheltering them with basic needs, access to toilets, clean water, food, and most of all, a sense of dignity and a sense of security. We should be expanding our low barriers, thinking creatively, thinking about portable, mobile housing units, revamping some of our unused properties so they can be utilized for transitional and temporary housing. It's also really important to collaborate with our neighboring towns and make sure that this is not just a Burlington-specific issue. We need all hands on deck right now to take care of our neighbors. So yes, the long-term solution is to increase housing supply. A way to do that is looking at taxing second homes, or perhaps looking at the wealth tax, which has been projected to shake out approximately $70 million as an estimation, which we could use to fund some of these necessary incentives and programs.
Okay, thank you both for your responses. So now, issue that I think is very front of mind in Burlington these days, public safety and also criminal justice reform. Public safety is a top priority for many voters in this election. This past session, lawmakers increased judicial staff, increased retail theft penalties, and expanded restorative justice practices in Vermont. What more needs to be done by the legislature to advance public safety and repair Vermont's criminal justice system? And so we'll start with Representative Stone.
Yes, my colleague is on House Judiciary Committee, so she's going to be able to dive in the weeds a lot more than me. But I was really happy to support more funding for our courts, not just the traditional things that you think of when you think of funding the courts, not just for judges and attorneys, but also putting money into our criminal justice reform and restorative justice programs. Also, helping to make sure that we are looking at incarceration as a final stop and looking at other paths to reduce incarceration, looking at pre-charge diversion and increasing the resources there to make that happen was super important to me. There's still a lot more work to do. It's going to take time for those positions to be filled and get those people in those positions to make the court process more timely and the court system more well equipped. And a lot of that is likely going to come down to the issue we just talked about, housing. if that's what I'm seeing in the hospital, at least, is even if we throw more money for workforce recruitment and retention, you still need places for folks to live, especially if they're moving from out of state. So I'm really proud of the work that we did, but we have a lot more to do. I'd like to see a lot more work done on common sense gun reform. We did a lot of work addressing that this last biennium, increasing waiting periods and safe storage, but ultimately we have more work to do. Banning guns and bars is something that our city council has brought up time and time again, and looking at ultimately banning assault weapons would be something that I would like to see done in our state.
Thank you. Representative Rachelson, your turn.
So it's exciting that we were able to add more positions to the state attorneys, the public defenders, and add more judges. In fact, we interviewed candidates last week for judge and sent names up to the governor. So hopefully he will appoint somebody or people soon. We made changes, a bill that I introduced with the chair, we made changes to who's eligible. We decreased the time that somebody has to practice in Vermont. They still have to have 10 years of law, but 5 years in Vermont. So we had more applicants, and many people said, we're so glad you changed this. So what do we still need to do? We did restorative justice legislation, but we can't mandate it, and some state attorneys don't want to use it. So we have geographic justice in our state, and in some counties, people serve jail time where other people have the option to do a diversion program. We send people out of state to a for-profit prison. So one, these prisons are making a profit. Their goal is profit, not keeping recidivism rates down. This prison is in Mississippi. The further away you send somebody, the worse the outcomes are. So right now we spend a ton on corrections, and recidivism rates are so high, and we're not sort of demanding better. We need to also look at mental health and substance abuse not being the main reason people are getting incarcerated.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, a lot to talk about in those issues.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to switch gears a little bit now and introduce our lightning round.
Oh boy.
Yes. So the idea here is for, that's right. And I know you asked before if we had prizes for you, but I'm afraid we don't. So the idea here is for me to ask you a fairly simple question and for you to respond either with a yes or no, or at least with something that's less than 10 seconds. If you absolutely can't, just keep yourself to yes or no. All right, so we'll start off, and actually I think maybe just for ease, we'll start with Mary-Katherine each time, and then go to Barbara. First of all, should private schools be funded with public dollars?
This should be a whole question, but if we could go back in time, I would say no. The horse is out of the gate, so I'm going to say public dollars, public rules. If you receive public dollars, then you should be playing by the same rules.
Okay, and Barbara?
Yes and no. Yes, there are times that private schools are a great addition, but not unless they are playing by the same rules. We're very much simpatico.
Great, okay. Secondly, do you support raising the age of family court jurisdiction?
Yes.
Okay.
Emphatically, yes.
Okay, that was easy. All right. Should biomass, burning wood, play a role in emissions reduction strategies? Mary-Katherine.
No long-term, but phasing it into the process as part of the strategy to get to net zero under 10 seconds.
And I'm going to say we need to really move to no really quickly because it is emitting a lot more greenhouse emissions, and they threaten the health of local communities. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Do you support a statewide ban on assault weapons? You've already mentioned this, Mary-Katherine.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Next, did Governor Scott overstep his authority by appointing Zoe Saunders as interim education secretary after the Senate did not affirm her appointment? Mary-Katherine.
Absolutely, 100% yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to say I know that the Attorney General has said she didn't think this was a strong case. So even if it's not illegal, it is not playing well with others.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Okay, and next is, where do you get your news? Mary-Katherine.
Digger, 7 Days, New York Times, NPR, VPR, and let's talk about content creators. That's a millennial Gen Z side of me coming out, and it was elevated at the DNC. They had content creators there. Two of my favorites are Under the Desk News and Raven Reveals. Just encourage people to take a look at who you're getting your content from and ask yourself, are you listening to diverse and marginalized voices? Because that's super important.
Great. Okay, Barbara.
So New York Times, Vermont Public, 7 Days, Vermont Digger, and Washington Post, and I'll disclose my daughter works there.
Okay.
I did not say Vermont Public. They changed their name. I
That's
keep
true.
saying VPR.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that's what you meant. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we got that. All righty. And here's a good question. Do you ride the bus? Mary-Katherine.
infrequently, I like walking. I try to get 15,000 steps a day. So I like walking to work and getting around my neighborhood that way.
So yes, and I was thinking about going to Montpelier whenever I can. I used to ride it regularly to Montpelier, and it gets trickier as session gets longer, and the bus schedules get cut back. On vacation now, I happen to be in Europe and got to use public transportation, which is an incredible model for our country. It's so convenient.
Definitely. All right. And the last question in the lightning round is, what is your favorite ice cream in Vermont?
Oh, yeah. So I like the mocha twist creamy with Forbidden Love cookie crumble from Cookie Love.
Oh, boy.
Very specific, but
Very specific.
The cookie crumble is where it's at.
Okay, thank you.
So creamies, I have a special place in my heart for. I've got to say, Ben & Jerry's and Sisters of Anarchy. I had a guest who had a horrible nut allergy, and Sisters of Anarchy is like great about not having nuts in their machinery.
Very good. Okay, great. All right, our time is limited, so I'm going to ask you one last question, issue that's near and dear to my heart, and then we'll wrap up. So this is on healthcare. One of the primary drivers in rising school budgets and affordability issues in Vermont is the increasing cost of health insurance. What can the state do to reduce the cost of healthcare and still meet the healthcare needs of every Vermonter? Barbara, why don't we start with you?
So one is we need to have affordable health insurance with prevention, co-pays, and prescription deductibles that are affordable. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard from people that they're like, I'm not going to go, I can't afford the copay, or I can't go get my prescription. We need to make sure that people have transportation to get to their doctor, and frankly, we need to have paid sick leave. The number of people that are hourly that are like, I can't take time off to go get a mammogram. We need to do something about the shortage of doctors and nurses and continue to fund programs to pay loan forgiveness. Housing shortages for people moving here, people who are unhoused and at greater risk.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mary-Katherine.
Yes, in Vermont, we have a pretty small jurisdiction over the piece of pie that is healthcare. But we passed a lot of bills this past year to help, to work on hospital sustainability, which will work in the direction to help reduce cost of specific treatments and diagnostics, particularly those that are more costly. Our Committee on Healthcare also did a great job to reduce prescription drug costs, to reduce provider burden. They passed a lot of compact bills, which offers reciprocity between states for folks who have licensure in certain professions, which will help with the workforce recruitment and retention issues we have. And then reducing provider burden and expanding Medicaid. And there's still more work that I think needs to be done in that realm in particular. We need to ultimately increase the risk pool of people paying into healthcare insurance in order to lower cost and have more control. I mean, ultimately, universal health care is what I feel like is the answer to everything. But in regards to education, I feel like there has to be conversations on a way to either remove the cost of health insurance from the education fund, or at the very least do it in a more sustainable way, because the way that we are doing it now is not working.
Great, and thank you very much both for those thoughtful answers. Actually, it does look like we have a little bit more time, and I think that the overdose crisis it's related to the healthcare. So if you wouldn't mind taking maybe just a minute I know that's a little unfair to you, but 231 people died from an overdose in Vermont in 2023, with 95% of overdoses involving fentanyl. What must be done to prevent overdoses, promote addiction recovery, and deter the illegal sale of opioids in Vermont? And we'll start with you, Representative Stone.
I was a big proponent of the overdose prevention centers, and that was because I did a lot of research looking into it. This isn't a new idea. It's not something that we just dreamed up. There's a lot of research behind it, and a lot of models that we can look to. As a healthcare worker who spent a lot of time in the emergency department and all over the hospital, I will tell you that we end up seeing these patients, but usually after it's too late and the damage has been done. So I would much rather be able to see them before they're at oftentimes the end of their life. So I'm really happy that we passed that, and I look forward to seeing how that comes to fruition.
Great, thank you. And Representative Rachelson, you'll have the last word.
So a shout out to former Representative Celine Coburn, who introduced this bill, and several bienniums ago. I was a co-sponsor then, and it was really exciting that it finally is coming to fruition. One thing I've seen from the work that I've done as a social worker with people with addiction is it's very confusing. When people know it's against the law and they may get arrested, it really keeps people from getting help. And so I would love to see us move forward as a state to decriminalize use, and in many cases, use involves people having possession of a lot because they're buying it so that they're not running out. Addiction's hard, and we want to keep people alive, and I'm really excited that Burlington's going to launch. I hope it will be a model for other parts of the state, and we need to have more fentanyl testing strips and keep people alive while they're dealing with their addiction.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
We covered a lot in a very short period of time. And thank you at home for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, local budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and many more forums at cctv.org/general or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. Don't forget to cast your ballot in the general election on or before November 5th. Then tune into Town Meeting TV's results recap show that evening at 7:30 p.m. Contact your local clerk to find out how to obtain a ballot and to register to vote. In Vermont, remember you can register to vote on Election Day. Thank you very much for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV.